and welcome. My name's Tarek Bhatti, General Manager at Geonet Australia, and today it's my pleasure to host the first of my podcasts, and I've got three very special guests that we're going to be talking about the Geonet Retail Fund. 12 months ago, Geonet launched a wholesale fund, and now we're in the process of establishing a retail fund. And through that process, we're going to talk a little bit around what a fund looks like, how it's set up, the importance of compliance, trusteeship, and governance. So, in a world that's becoming more and more regulated, it's really important to get an understanding about what a fund is and how it operates. To discuss these, I'm joined today by Caleb Gibbins, CEO of Cash. Also, Dalton Grant Jr., CEO of the Geonet Investment Fund, and Chris Hodda, Head of Assets. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today. We're going to go through a fair amount of information. I've got a number of questions to go through. But before we do that, I've really been interested to hear a little bit about yourselves, a little bit of background about your expertise in your chosen field. So we'll start off with Caleb and then Dalton and Chris.
Sure. So
thanks.
My name's Caleb Gibbins, and I'm the CEO and founder of Cash Invest. We've been running for 5 years as a professional trustee, responsible entity and fund service provider. Before that, I was a financial services funds lawyer at Minter Ellison, specialising in larger retail, mostly listed investment trusts. And now we launch and operate wealth products and trusts for our clients.
Excellent. Thanks, Caleb. Dalton.
Hi, Dalton Grant Jr. is my name. The CEO of Geonet Investment Fund. I also work with York Street Capital in digital assets, and we've been in the financial management and funds management and investment sector for about the last 15 years. So,
awesome. Thank you very much. Chris.
And my name is Chris Hodda, Head of Assets. I've been involved in banking, wealth management and funds management for over 35 years. Senior executive roles in all of the major banks, wealth management, some of them at wealth management companies in Australia. High performance coach for over a decade, and corporate advisory, and now including the head of assets for Geonet, overseeing how we utilise our assets and how those assets perform over time once they're operational, and also new opportunities for assets within the region, in particular Southeast Asia, moving forward.
Yeah, okay. Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, all of you. So I've got a number of questions to ask all of you about the establishment of a retail fund and what that means for our investors, and also how we manage that process. So I'm going to bounce around from each of you. Chris, I'll kick off with yourself. You've spent many years now working with investors. Mm-hmm. What changes have you seen in the market with regards to how investors think about property and other type of assets today?
Yeah, well, as I said, I've been involved in banking and wealth management for a very long time.
Yeah.
As I said, and traditionally, residential property has been the cornerstone of wealth creation within Australia. Mm-hmm. And a lot of wealth has been built off the back of residential property. So, but what we've seen is for that long time, it's been around a single house, a single suburb. You're looking at, median house prices, consistently above $1 million across the country for the first time ever last year. Yields are tight. Regulations are getting heavier when it comes to properties, and people, are now looking beyond major cities to look at investing in property. Mm. But more recently, particularly since COVID, income and cash flow has become a lot more important for investors in Australia. Not just buying a house, renting it out, negatively gearing it, and hoping that the property will increase in value over time. They're looking beyond what that property is to more around what it's doing every single day, and how can I diversify my income within real estate? How can I look at accessing potential opportunities that are cash flow positive as opposed to cash flow negative, mm-hmm. And hoping for capital growth. So, that whole domestic focus is I'm seeing starting to shift away to dipping the toe into what can I look at beyond my border, because as I said, yields are quite tight. So how can I access to real estate investment beyond my borders, in areas like Bali and other like jurisdictions.
Yep.
But more importantly, getting access to assets that have typically only been available to ultra high net worth families or institutional investors. So, luxury 5-star hotel assets that traditionally you wouldn't get access to in a market like Australia, or even markets outside of Australia. It's reserved for the ultra wealthy. So, real assets that are providing more diversification than just rent, and not just hoping for upside in growth, many years down the track, but what those assets are actually doing on a day-to-day basis, and how can I diversify my investment opportunities in real estate.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that we've been hearing a lot when doing some of our investor nights in Australia, that customers are starting to feel that pain of not being either able to get into the market or having to do strategies that just don't help them be cash flow positive right from the outset, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So why did Geonet then decide that going down a fund vehicle was something that we wanted to pursue, rather than just doing normal investment strategies?
Look, I think what stops people from investing offshore or looking at opportunities, like we're doing at Geonet, is not their lack of interest, but it's their lack of understanding or lack of comfort or lack of familiarity in those sorts of things. So while many people understand Bali, know Bali, there's many people who want to come over here and do their own developments in Bali, which can be problematic in its own right. What we wanted to do was provide a regulated structure with governance, and a structure that's familiar to Australians, to give them access to, these types of opportunities. So, they struggle with things that they aren't familiar with. And Australians are familiar with retail funds. And when you take a step back to what we're doing here, we've been operating in Bali for over 12 years. We've built a team of over 60 people, 50 odd in Bali, 10 in Australia. We've partnered with some of the biggest brands in the world, like Elle Magazine, 80-year anniversary this year, icon of fashion and lifestyle, worldwide.
Yeah.
Brands like Colliers, who are the project development managers, internationally renowned. Multi-award winning architects being in Spiral, Tristan Duplessis, who is the interior designer for the Beach Club and the entertainment venues, has worked with brands like Louis Vuitton, out of South Africa. You've got Conner and Partners, Hyatt, those sorts of brands in relation to interior design internally. Cross Resorts and Hotels are owned by Sono, one of the biggest hospitality groups in the world. But all of that isn't enough for everyone to step over the line and say, hey, we'd like to have some have a taste of that investment opportunity.
Yeah.
And you step it back. Finn's Beach Club in Bali is probably one of the most iconic destinations here. 4,500 guests a day, and I bet that not one of that there isn't one of those people that wouldn't say, I wish I could get a piece of this. But all of that isn't enough to sort of to make that decision and to step over the line and do that. So for us, creating a fund was a natural progression in how we've developed.
Yep.
And where we are today. And what that does is gives people a regulated, strict framework that provides governance and oversight on the development and the operations of the project, to ensure that we deliver against what we are aiming to deliver.
Yep.
And that can be the step that, gives some familiarity in an unfamiliar territory to make that decision to invest. But it also opens up the market to a significant portion of investors that wouldn't typically even consider Bali or hospitality assets, but it gives them that additional level of comfort that it's going and being run through a regulated framework such as a retail fund.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think we're seeing it more and more that people are starting to want to dip their toe in going offshore, but not having that comfort and familiarity with how to do so. We've seen it in Australia a lot over the years that other people have identified that buying into Australia is an opportunity to diversify their portfolios, and now hopefully Australians can see the opportunity that's presenting themselves in Southeast Asia. Dalton, a couple of questions for you. As our CEO of the Geonet Investment Fund, Chris started to touch on it, but I kind of want to go to you specifically around it.
Yeah.
With the retail fund, who is it actually designed for? And on top of that, how is it different again from a traditional investment approach?
Right. So the retail fund is, we can say in this respect that it's really designed for a broader scope of people. I guess you could call it your everyday punters.
Yep.
And giving them the opportunity to get exposure under a regulated structure that's got a high level of governance, and that give them exposure into an asset that they don't have to have day-to-day involvement in the operations and so forth.
Yeah. Okay.
So it creates a level of well, you can say, like Chris was saying, a level of trust.
Yep.
Because of the robust framework that I'm sure Caleb will go through a bit later on what the AFL structure actually provides for that.
Yep.
So it's that would be the simple answer. It gives retail investors.
Yep. So your everyday mums and dads.
Everyday mums and dads. Yeah.
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 Okay. And as Chris was saying, I guess it's getting an opportunity for those everyday investors to get into an asset class that they normally wouldn't do so, but having that peace of mind. So probably at a high level then, how is a retail fund structured?
Right. So it's a unit trust. And that's under an AFSL framework. And there'll be a PDS, a public disclosure statement, along with a TDM as a target market determination that allows for those folks that are in that category that we're targeting for this particular asset class, that they have exposure to that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Caleb, I'll throw over to you. Dalton's done a nice little segue into, I guess, getting a bit more of an understanding about the fund from a compliance and structure perspective, and mentioned the term AFSL. A lot of people have heard what an AFSL is, but don't really know what it is. Can you give us a bit of a layman's term breakdown of what an AFSL is all about?
Sure. So an AFSL is an Australian financial services license, and it authorises a company or a group to carry on a financial services business in Australia. In the context of running an investment fund that provides investors exposure to this project in Bali, the operation of the fund is a financial service and requires a license, but also the distribution of those investment products in Australia is a financial service and requires a license. And so in order to raise money from Australian investors to pull it together in a fund and then deploy that into a project, in this case in Bali, those functions are regulated activities. And so ASIC has a framework that provides AFSLs to companies that have met the standard across capital requirements. They demonstrated expertise and experience. They're operated by good and proper people. They have to provide reports to ASIC regularly on their activities and their financials. They have breach reporting obligations, complaints handling obligations. The regulated framework ensures that if someone is carrying on a financial services business in Australia, it has been done to a fit and proper standard, and the company that is providing those services is regulated by ASIC in this country.
Yeah, excellent. Sounds like, again, it's giving investors, those mums and dads, everyday investors, an opportunity of having peace of mind under that type of a framework. There are a couple of terms people may have heard of: trustees, responsible entities. Again, if you wouldn't mind just kind of explaining what that is and why do they matter?
Sure. So the term a trustee is the company or person who runs a trust. And the term responsible entity is the same thing, but that is in the context of a retail product. So for wholesale funds, you would say they have a trustee. For a retail fund, you might say they have a responsible entity. And some people might call it a trustee anyway as a colloquial term, but they're fundamentally the same role. The role of a trustee or responsible entity is to act in the best interests of investors. So fundamentally what a trust does is it raises capital from multiple investors into a structure, and then it deploys that money into a investment strategy, which could be a diverse portfolio of assets, or in this case, a single project. And then the trustee ensures that that vehicle is managed in the best interest of investors, consistent with the mandate that the investor signed up for in the disclosure document, and in compliance with all appropriate laws. Now, this gives investors peace of mind, because if you're a small investor in a large project, you may not feel like your vote matters. And, you might be trusting that some other bigger investor out there is advocating on behalf of the investors as a whole. Mm-hmm. If you invest into a project through a fund structure, you have a trustee there who is effectively fighting for you and the other investors. So it means that rather than being a small investor in a large project, you are now pooling together with other investors, and that money is being deployed by a trustee on your behalf, so that you can be assured that your money is being deployed in a manner and your rights are being exercised in a manner that's in your best interest.
Yeah, okay, excellent. Thank you very much for that. So then, for the role of cash from a day-to-day perspective for Geonet's fund,
yes.
What is their role? You've touched on a number of elements of what a fund does, but from a day-to-day perspective, what will you be doing?
Well, there's a series of things that the trustee does on an operational level, and it really depends on what status the trustee's at and the stage the project is at. So there's a role in preparing documentation, establishing the structure, setting up bank accounts and custody accounts so that assets and money can be held in an appropriate manner consistent with regulations. Then there's a disclosure element. So when we prepare a product disclosure statement, that's a document that provides information to investors regarding all the benefits, risks, and details of the project that they need to make an investment decision. Mm-hmm. The preparation of that document is a highly regulated activity that the trustee has to do, and the trustee has to go through a process to prepare it so that it is robust. So there's a disclosure element. Then at the fundraising stage, we are the company that issues units in the fund. So we are the one who have to accept investors, be confident that KYC checks have been done, that the products only being distributed to people within the target market and not to other people. And then once the money's been brought into the fund, it's our job to oversee the fund manager and Dalton and his team to make sure that the money's being deployed in a manner which is consistent with both the mandate and the best interest of investors. So we will oversee the deployment of capital, the reporting that comes back from the asset holder and the project construction progress and the like, projections regarding cash flows and project delivery, if there's any hiccups along the way, how they're being addressed. And then also in relation to customer support, complaints handling and the like, there is a pool of investors out there, and if they have inquiries regarding the operation of the trust, if they have any queries or complaints, those also come to us as a trustee, and we're there to make sure that their interests are protected. And so we will respond on that basis. Then finally, from a compliance and governance perspective, we have a robust compliance framework, a compliance committee that handles all compliance matters that may come through the trust from time to time. If there is a breach, we have breach reporting processes and handling from that perspective. But fundamentally, we run the trust from end to end as the trustee, and we oversee all the different service providers and functions within the trust to make sure that the investor's best interest is being protected.
Yeah, which actually ties into the next question, which I think you may have already answered, but I'd be really keen to get both Dalton and Caleb's thoughts on this. So why then should an investor be interested and care about compliance? Why is that important to them?
I think compliance is critically important to investor protections, because compliance are the steps you take to make sure that things either don't go wrong, it's less likely they go wrong, or if they do, they get caught early and they get addressed. Okay. I think obviously there are risks to any investment, and that applies to onshore, offshore, all property, different asset classes. What you want is a robust compliance and governance structure that says we're managing risks, we're managing non-compliances. If there are breaches, if something goes wrong, we want a good culture of transparency and honesty so that the different service providers can identify issues, resolve them, and then make sure that investors are protected. Because if there's an issue of some kind and it's identified early, probably can be fixed, and then investors can be protected and a good outcome is achieved. But if you don't have, proper compliance and governance and risk management steps in place, then little issues can become bigger issues, and the issues might not be identified in time, and then that can have worse outcomes for investors.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and just one additional thing to what Caleb said, and it's only one thing, just clear reporting. So it's going to be there that everyone can see what's going on. It's very transparent and it's happening on an ongoing basis, and,
Yep.
and investors are going to get reports showing everything that's going on.
Awesome. So, in light of the fact that this is an opportunity for Australian investors looking into overseas markets, asset classes they've never had an opportunity to get into, a structured, regulated product that has compliance and oversight, guardianship and trusteeships to protect our investors. Dalton, question for you. If someone actually wants to then go through the process of investing through the retail fund, what does that process look like for an investor?
Well, first they will hear about it by whatever means that they come to the information, and then they'll need to read the PDS and all the associated documents with that. They will then need to make an application and go through KYC or KYB, whichever they're going to be investing through, and then they'll need to send us their money and then get their units issued.
So, in light of the fact, from what we've talked about so far about everyday investors having the opportunity to go into an asset class outside of traditional investing in Australia. We've got a governance and security around compliance that we've spoken about. Dalton, question for yourself then. So if someone is interested in investing in the retail fund, what does that process look like for an investor?
Sure. Well, once they come across the opportunity, whatever means that becomes available to them, they will need to read the product disclosure statement and all the associated documents. They will also need to seek independent financial advice. They can then make an application. They will, after the application's been brought in, they'll need to do a KYC, KYB, send us their money. Once all that's gone through to the responsible entity and their trustee, the units will then be issued and they can be brought into the fund.
Okay, pretty straightforward.
Can I add to that as well, Tarek? And I think unlike some other traditional retail funds where you may be investing into that fund structure and that's diversified across a number of projects, whether it be in Australia or overseas, and you don't necessarily have the opportunity to access people involved in the underlying assets. In addition to that, and getting their own independent financial advice, etc., Australians are the biggest, tourism market here in Bali, and continues to grow. And the other additional steps that investors may wish to take if they're visiting Bali or they're looking at coming to Bali, they can come and meet with the developer, with the team, meet some of the specialists and partners that are working with us. They can visit the site. They can come to our office. We can share with them additional information, and provide a personalised approach to, who we are and what we're about, within the framework and the guidelines that's allowed for us, by the trustee and within, fund requirements. So, but we're more than happy to meet with investors if they're planning to be here. And from an ongoing perspective, once they are an investor in the fund, obviously they'll have the opportunity to continue to come here and enjoy the facilities of the underlying asset, being the old Resort and Beach Club. So,
yeah, cool. Okay. So I mentioned right from the outset that Geonet had launched a wholesale fund 12 months ago. Chris, why was the decision now made for Geonet to launch a retail fund now? Was there anything in particular?
Look, I think I touched on it earlier on. This is, what we want is to give investors the comfort that there's robustness behind what we're doing. Now, a regulated framework such as a retail fund doesn't change the asset. But what it does change is the way that people make decisions around investing into that asset. So that was very important to us to provide those protections, the rigor and the structure, the robustness that Caleb talks about, but also accountability on our side because, if you look at every other developer in Bali or Southeast Asia, they wouldn't look at entering into that much robustness and accountability with a trustee and a fund. But for us, it was a conscious decision that we wanted to make to give investors the confidence to step outside of a domestic think or mindset into a more regional, looking at over the back fence and looking at what else is out there in the marketplace. So for us, it was a no-brainer to go down the retail fund path. Not easy, a lot of hard work. I had hair when we started. But absolutely worthwhile. But, I can't reiterate enough. It doesn't change the asset, but it helps people, it helps the decision-making process, and that's what it changes.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. One more question, and this one's to you, Dalton. I'm going to ask you to get your crystal ball out and have a think about what will success look like for the Geonet Investment Fund in, say, a couple of years' time?
That's a good question. For us, success would look like we've got the El Beach Club and Resort. It's up, it's running.
Yep.
We've got investors that are very happy to be with us, and we're starting to be very, very profitable. And looking at rolling out other hotel and resorts, not just here in Bali, but in other regions around Asia Pacific and maybe even further away.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent.
So in addition to what Dalton's spoken about in relation to what the success look like for the fund, from Geonet's perspective, success for us is that all of the investors in the fund are achieving the outcomes that they were expecting to achieve by investing into the Geonet Investment Fund, and in particular the El Resort and Beach Club. But most importantly, that every week, every month, we're going to see happy investors alongside us at the Resort and Beach Club, drinking cocktails, eating steaks, and realising that every single person around them, that they're getting a piece of that as an investor in the fund.
Yeah. Awesome.
So that's what we're looking forward to.
Yeah.
Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time today. It's been really insightful getting to have you to share why we're setting up a retail fund and what it takes to set one up. For our audience, hopefully this has been really insightful for yourselves as well, to give you an understanding about what it takes to set up a fund, and giving you the peace of mind that this type of a product gives you added security, transparency, compliance. It's being governed by a regulated product, and as such, hopefully gives you the opportunity to jump on board the Geonet journey with us. Until next time, thank you very much.